It is March 10th. And this is the Transportation and Transit Commission convening this meeting at 6:30. For roll call, I'm here. Troy?
Here.
Rich is not here. Excused absence. Jason?
Here.
Thank you. Michael Gernetsky? I see you, so I know you're here. Gabriella?
Here.
Gerhardt and Elizabeth Ward. So we have a quorum. Only one person is absent. I see nobody here to make a public appearance on a non-agenda item, and nor do I see a name or in the face on the screen over there. So I assume that no one is here for that purpose. Next item is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion on that?
I'll move to approve.
Troy moves to approve. Second?
Second.
Gabriella seconds. Any discussion or comments on this agenda? We did get a request from Rich to postpone essentially item 7C.
I would make a motion to move to a time certain, which would be the next meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion to move that to the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, thank you very much. We'll do that next time. Any other suggestions for changes? I think I interrupted you, Andrew. Were you going to comment on Rich's suggestion?
Yep, that's right.
We should probably vote on the amendment.
Oh, sorry.
And then follow up.
Thank you for keeping me online, Troy. All those in favor of moving that item to the next commission meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Thank you, Troy. Approval of minutes.
Oh, I think we should approve the agenda now that it's amended, right? Yeah.
Do we have to vote on that too?
Yeah,
Am I
we vote on the
forgetting that?
amendment and then
Yeah.
we vote on the
Thank you.
full agenda.
Thank you. Can I, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended?
Aye.
And opposed? Hearing none, we've done that. I'm glad I've got you guys here. See, if I was here all by myself, it would just be totally confusing.
That's where the automation would kick in.
Yeah, well, I see. And we have minutes to approve. Is there a motion to approve minutes?
I move to approve.
I can second.
And there's a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? I thought they were very complete. And now I'm looking for my copy, but I thought they were a very good job and thorough. Those of you that were here should be the ones to comment on whether you thought your ideas were adequately reflected. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, is there?
Was there anybody opposed? No. Thank you. Minute approved. Item 7, review items. 7A, review of the 2022 draft transit plan. And so, Andrew, if you would give us an oversight of what you've done.
Sure. Yeah, so last time we talked a little bit about this. Basically, I showed everybody kind of the 2010 to 2014 transit plan that was written back in 2010. And I believe in it kind of suggested that this plan would be updated every year for kind of a 5-year outlook. I don't think that was carried out. So, I think you guys asked for a pretty good refresh, knowing that a lot of this stuff was out of date. And so I can certainly go through that, but before I do, I just kind of want to set the stage of what the plan is right now. So basically, we maybe go through highlights, just some of the things that change and kind of a orientation from where I'm coming from with the updates today. And then I can give you the Word version over the next month. If you guys have comments, I can kind of put those all together so that next time we can come together with a whole bunch of comments to review and then get those comments incorporated before it going to council in May. So that's kind of the process I was thinking of. And I'm going to open it up first in just PDF, just with a clean version, but I do have the track changes on so we can kind of review that, but it is quite messy, so I don't want to totally confuse folks.
Okay. Were there any, oh. So are you gonna walk us through a little bit then, or?
Yeah, yep, for sure, yeah. So mainly kind of three sections again. So I took out the first section, which was existing conditions, mainly because it was, all 2010 based or 2008 based. We can put that back in once I have updated data, but for now, I kind of left it off, just knowing that really in my mind, the most important is kind of setting the goals and getting the action items ready to go, and then kind of updating and knowing everything's in flux. I didn't want to put everything down for existing conditions, knowing that it's all going to change in a year. So that was my rationale there. And then going into section 1, basically this is just copying over the latest 23 comp plan goals, objectives, policies into this plan, just to orientate the reader of this is what the comp plan is saying for things related to transit. So I can go through these, but there weren't a whole lot of changes. There were some subtle changes, and I can definitely give you the track changes to kind of see what those are. But I won't belabor that too much. Then it goes, and this is very similar to the last, the 2010 transit plan. That section 2 was the comp plan goals, objectives, policies, and section 3 was the transit plans. And so there wasn't a clear connection. It wasn't, and I haven't really built that yet here, of kind of here are the transit goals and how they relate back to comp plan goals. It was kind of like, that's them, and now this is this. And so I do have a proposal for how we could do that. But for right now, I basically left in the comp plan goals, or the transit goals from last time, these 3. I'll just quickly share my screen on the Word version. So this is that section before. I did take some out. So there was provide multiple transportation options. Although that's really important, I don't know if it's necessarily different enough. And we can kind of get down to the table in a little bit. That can kind of show you for a lot of these action items, really, that's where I think the goals matter, of kind of what goals we're trying to achieve and how we measure those. We were checking a lot of the goals off for the action. So we'd have all 3 goals or 2 of the 3 goals. So I just didn't want to add in more goals that were just going to get checked off by action items. I'm happy to add that one back in. Similarly, provide strong connections between transit system and other modes, bikes, peds, motorists, other mobility options. Definitely have a lot of actions related to that. I think making hubs, bike parking, sidewalks, bike facilities. That's all represented in the action items. I just took it out because it felt like there was some overlap already if we're trying to, so I just was trying to streamline a little bit, but I'm happy to bring that back in if you guys feel strongly about that. And I think I just moved this down. So, but yeah, these were the kind of, I think, 5 goals before. So I took 2 of them out just to streamline.
So when you provide us a document to look at, will it show the things you've deleted? Are you going to give us a red line thing like this, or?
I'll give you both. I'll just give you the clean one for your comments. I'll give you this one for reference. Okay. Because I think that should help kind of what we change. But at the same time, I don't want to get too bogged down. We'll have 3 different comments in there along with the old stuff. So I want to make sure, I'm happy to do it whatever way you want, but I think 2 different versions might be the simplest way.
I think that's a great idea.
Just a quick question, sorry to interrupt you, I don't want to sidetrack, but section 1, is this all verbatim out of the comp plan?
All of that text, yep, the goals,
So this is
objectives,
the
policy,
comp
that's all verbatim.
And
it's just what's related to transit.
Right, so you pull out the transit-related thing from the comp plan. Is it, just could I ask anybody in the commission or you, Andrew, is it appropriate in this exercise we're doing to suggest amendments to these provisions of the comp plan? Or should those be just taken as the constitution that we're dealing with and go from there? I don't know, I don't have any concern.
Amendments to the comp plan well, there's a real specific process, and,
Yes.
and only minor amendments are acceptable, and they can only happen once a quarter, I believe.
Okay.
We very rarely see them. I mean, sometimes we'll get a minor amendment every once in a while, but yeah, I do not think it's within the scope of this plan update to try to update the comp plan. That being said, if there is something that comes up, we can certainly explore that, but.
Okay. And it just finally, and I do agree with your impulse to try to connect the transit goals and so on with the comp plan language. I don't know the best way to do that, but I think it's be appropriate for us to have those connected, so we're seeing how we are implementing the comp plan ideas through this document.
Yep, and I can, I'll put a pin in that for now, but I will show you a table where we might put that,
Okay.
that connection. Are you okay if I move on to
Yeah,
section?
oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So that's the kind of the streamlined versions of the transit goals. And then I just kind of introduce each of the 3 goals with some text just to kind of explain. I'd further break down goal 1. And reducing SOV, basically we're saying, we're if in the typical paradigm of choice riders versus captive riders, this is the choice rider more oriented goal, right? So we're trying to get people out of single occupancy vehicles onto transit, making it more convenient, cost effective, and comfortable for them in order to do that, right? To make that life decision. So, I broke it down like that, and then, laid out basically some action items associated with those. So again, in just kind of this framework, we're trying to boil the ocean, right? So establishing some themes that could be effective. So, I took a shot at this. Certainly I'm happy to move this around or kind of change the way this is organized, but it made sense to me, so that's why I did it. But basically just trying to accomplish these 3 sub-goals to move the needle on SOV and ultimately providing transit where people are. I think it's a big one, but a lot of these other ones are, for example, electronic next bus signs at major hubs, like so that people, are comfortable when they get there, that they know when the next bus is coming. Obviously, bus shelters and improvements, improving the infrastructure, for that first and last mile in a lot of ways. I think, there's a lot of those things. And then as well, we get into some of the TDM, which is kind of here. And I think this is actually potentially a big shift. Before we had it, I think it was encourage employers to look at TDM programs. Now potentially, I'm going slightly, maybe the next step of determine the feasibility of potentially having the city determine a TDM management program, so that, the city of Madison does this, that we would establish a point system that would basically incentivize new developments to do some of these things that we want, in order to bolster transit. So whether that's, I think I have a few examples in here of, van pool, shuttle service, discounted transit passes, those sorts of things that basically, depending upon the number of vehicles that are at the department or business, that you'd be potentially asking them to do some of these. So there's some choice. They just have to get points, and we have points assigned to kind of the efficacy of lowering those SOV trips. And so, and so I'm happy to talk more about that, but that is kind of the first introduction. Before, I think it was more of a putting that on the employers. Now it could be potentially, and I started talking and planning about this, but it's definitely in the feasibility initial stages of, potentially introducing that as a city program. So that's definitely one highlight there. Cost effective, we do have parking rides in here. Mainly, as I see it, of getting folks, if you want somebody to forego a work trip, making sure it's cost competitive parking, wherever they're going, so that full cost, and then how that compares to kind of their travel time. Because we know it's very unlikely they're getting there faster by transit versus a single occupancy vehicle, but there could be other costs that, we could lower so that the overall trip cost is lower. And then comfortable, as I mentioned, bus stop amenities. So that was kind of how I structured that. Any comments about goal 1 before we move on? If you want me to go faster, I can, sorry.
I like how this is laid out,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I like the sub-goals. I think it looks great so far. I was
Yeah.
very impressed.
Okay.
My thought, which I'll add and send a comment to you, is emphasize the corridors that we want to improve intra-city transit in,
Okay.
which I put down as Fish Hatchery Road and McKee Road centered on City Hall.
Okay. Yeah, I think that could go in this one. That definitely makes sense. It could probably go in the other ones as well. So, okay. Probably under convenient, I would think.
Yeah, that's been one of the discussion themes we've had in this committee for a long time, is how do we improve transit to City Hall? So I think it makes sense to put it in a formal document just to focus.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing, it might work better in goal 2 just because that's more of
Yeah,
access. But yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think that putting that in here and in the kind of network recommendations, I think makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on to goal 2. So goal 2, again, in the classic paradigm, which is a little overblown, but is this kind of captive riders, folks who wouldn't have another choice. Though that's definitely not true. It's important to kind of realize that making sure that this is for folks, that this is their way, like one of their main ways of travel. Making sure that it's accessible and has that high mobility. And so, I broke this down into basically mode, how we were getting to transit, getting to and from, obviously. But there's a number of different ways you could look at this. But I guess I want to make sure that it was clear that we were, prioritizing that kind of intermodal behavior. That people don't just pop up, at their destinations, right? There is a way, kind of to and from the bus stop, and making that the kind of sub bullets here. So, yeah, happy to reframe that if something else makes more sense. But so walk to transit, certainly the sidewalk and ramps and pedestrian infrastructure, making sure that that's comfortable and complete in places around new bus stops that we designate. So that's clear cut. Also making sure it's maintained, and that was something that we took over from last plan of creating these agreements potentially to manage maintain bus stops. I believe that Metro does get to them, but it's a lower priority, and so between kind of Metro and the city staff, if we could get it faster, then that, certainly during snowstorms, I think people would appreciate that, make it more accessible. Biking, very similar, making sure that we have parking on-street and off-street facilities, to and from these locations. And then potentially, this is another Madison program, other cities have as well, that, there's kind of terrace bike parking applications that, the city would put operating funds into a pot that if a business or apartment building would like to add in bike parking, who didn't put it in the original site plan, maybe older buildings, they could, and the city would put it in, there'd just be a maintenance agreement with that property owner. So, those sorts of things that were maybe creating more flexible options for installing parking, especially near bus stops where we know folks might want to drop their bike off.
Andrew, I have a couple of just small notes here. There's a proposal that some of the Bike Fitchburg group put together that has been added as an amendment to the TID ARPA spending plan, and it's about Fitchburg Greenway system, like connecting those different bike infrastructure, completing that infrastructure so that bike paths truly connect throughout the city. That's an interesting concept. I don't know, it seems like it might be appropriate for bike to transit as a mention. And then this is sort of separate, but it would be interesting to maybe make a note of other organizations that can assist with implementing this plan. I don't know where that would go, but like Bike Fitchburg, obviously the bike committee, they're working on some of these issues as part of their work, and just not something that the Transportation Transit Committee, we don't need to reduplicate things that are already happening. Just a thought.
And I assume that those entities will have an opportunity to review this document too, so they can, as it comes along, they can insert or offer amendments.
Yeah, I think we should refer it, when the plan draft, we should refer it to Bike Committee for sure.
Okay. The only issue we might have is just a schedule. I think they meet in April and June, so if
Oh,
we're going to May. But I can work something out with Phil to try at least get review, some formal comments.
Yeah, I mean, you could just send them a copy of whatever we have for our meeting to them.
Yep.
Or to the chair, and he can forward it.
Yep.
That would probably be just as good.
While we're slowed down on goal to it, this is just a kind of a style concept, but when you say things should be done, I think this whole plan is about what should be done. So if you would say if you would say construct if, for example, under walk to transit, I think it's preferable to use more forceful language and say, construct AD ramps and sidewalks where possible, instead of that should be done. I mean, but just by putting that language there, we're saying that should happen. So I don't know if you can go,
It's
just
a
to go,
good
It's a little
note,
passive,
yeah.
yeah.
Because all the bullets could start with
Yeah.
a verb.
an active
Yeah.
verb. Yep.
Yeah, I had a rule once on a project I headed where I forbade the word should. Any waffle words, we either do or we do not, as I think Yoda famously said in a movie line.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a good point. And remind me of that when we get down to the table, because I think that's a good place to maybe embed where other entities are doing work that we can maybe assign a role. Like, you know, I've seen in other action plan kind of parts of plans that you have a lead agency type thing. That might be a good place. So we can include some other work that folks are doing in the plan. That's not just what the city is doing. Okay, micro-mobility to transit. So this, micro-mobility, we're talking about bike share, scooters, future things that we don't even know about yet, I guess. And so really kind of not cars, not walking, more traditional walking, biking, but something in the middle. And so this would be, potential, when you start thinking, bike parking is one thing, but when we start talking about, okay, what about scooter parking, and we have bike parking, but what about B-cycle? It's just kind of growing that footprint a little bit more. So potentially adding some of these multimodal hubs kind of strategically at places where we have, where we expect more ridership and where they would get used for that first mile, last mile. That could be, and basically that would be, it could be in a number of ways, but if that's parkland, dedicating, a spot in a park in a plan, or if that's in new developments, dedicating, if an outlot, a public outlot or something like that, something small, but still, tangible at that initial platting. I think that could be a potential, that this is, I think we talked about these multimodal hubs and maybe a different name in the former plan, but I don't know if they were, I think just establishing a more refined look at how we're actually going to implement those, I think is maybe what this is getting towards. So,
Yeah.
And then certainly, partnering with B-Cycle, which is, we're going out for grant money now, and kind of establishing policies for future micro-mobility. I think all that kind of plays into this one. But.
Yeah, this is where staff and the mayor and the council can use the TRD funding type of, CIP all rolled into one, whereas, if you're gonna if you buy land now for the BRT, so to speak, or you need if you add 2 feet to the right of way, you may be able to put in a B-cycle station. So I would encourage that type of synergy between all the things that you have in the air, Andrew, to add that one more thing.
And then I did put shared ride transit in here. So we do have, the metro area has the round trip free carpool service. I think certainly promoting that at some given interval, or making sure that people know about that, not only for full carpool, but also partial carpool. Somebody can get you to the 15-minute bus service, and that might be all you need, right? And so I think maybe just clarifying that for people, that it doesn't have to be, somebody working in your building or right next to it. And then demand responsive transit, so that, certainly when we're potentially talking about the senior center and shared ride taxi or microtransit. That's kind of what that could be. Also paratransit, certainly. And so I think I have kind of some of those options laid out in there. That's just kind of building out what that could be. And so these, are all potential action items, kind of under each way that you could get to transit. So that's goal 2 for, the mobility for non-drivers. And then goal 3 is improving intracity transit. So this kind of is like that last one that I talked about. But, basically, I think, as we'll see in a little bit, that, the network redesign, I'm sure we all know, is a, fundamental shift in kind of how Metro does network transit in the region. But a lot of that's direct service to downtown or kind of other parts of the region. It doesn't really capture that intracity, going from one side of town to the other. So we're not really fixing that with the network redesign. So potentially this goal 3 would be trying to get towards that. And I didn't have subcategories for this because I didn't have a whole lot, but we could certainly add them if somebody has a recommendation. And really, this is kind of kicking off the, what kind of steps do we need to take to kind of kickstart. We tried this before, it didn't work. If we want to try this again, what are the things we need to address? And so that was kind of what I laid out. And so we did all that, and then we also had kind of this, the last part of this kind of chapter or section is relating these goals to measurable measures of success. So this is a table, and I like tables. I like it all on one sheet. So it's like, this is what we're doing, and you just take it around like, have we got it done? And so I could see this more changing a lot, so feel free, if you have suggestions. But what I like about this is that it has all the action items that I kind of laid out in the bullet points above. It kind of cross-references them with goals, establishes some initial kind of high-level cost and timing. But theoretically, using that time frame, we could say this is what we're working on first, this is ongoing, this is medium, long term. And then potentially measures of success. So that some of these are performance measures, some of these are obvious, study complete type things. But being able annually or every other year to check some of these things off and show progress, I think is important. And that's a new feature that we didn't have in the last plan. So I think this I think is also maybe a good place to put in an additional column, probably make it 11 by 17 if we're going to do that, to talk. To specifically reference which of the comp plan goals, objective policies that we're cross-linking with. I've seen that in other plans that they do that. And I think this would be a good place to do that, to kind of show how we're referencing the comp plan goals. And then certainly, if there's other goals, we can put them on here, and then obviously cross-reference. So I'm happy to take comments if you guys have.
I started to interrupt, but a thought I had was, should this, and I do like tables also, and I like this one, should we have a column that shows the current status of these things? Now, where are we now with some of these?
Sure.
It was just a thought I had in reading through it. And again, and I'm not sure if we're talking about using more forceful or active verbs. Number 4, for example, says determine feasibility of a transportation demand program. Man, it sounds like that's something we might do with the next plan. We might say, do this plan. I mean, can't we say do a transportation demand program? I'm not sure if that's exactly appropriate, if it's not a good idea, but do we know enough about it? Maybe initiate a transportation demand management program if we think that's a good idea. Do we really need to study the feasibility? I don't know, but it's just on a theme of, stating more active, direct things that we're going to do, and less about studying and more about doing.
And I think these will mirror the changes that Andrew may make earlier in the document, right? Because these are basically pulled straight from the previous part of the document.
Exactly. I removed duplicates if there are them, but and I would say some of them maybe not show up in some of these sections in the goals, but I think they're relevant, so I did a check mark. But yeah, these are all the bullet points from above.
And a question.
Andrew, what?
I'm sorry, Jason. What was it?
It's Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Michael.
Yeah, Andrew, one of the things I see on here, or actually kind of don't see on here, is the accountability to taxpayers. So we've got a lot of great ideas, and I think it was in goal number 1, it was, kind of the cost efficiency to riders, but seeing as how the taxpayers in the city of Fitchburg are kind of flipping the bill for some of this stuff, how could we measure success, or how could we set goals around accountability to taxpayers?
Sure. If I may, I think in the performance measures, I know you set me up well for that segue. There are some potential measures of, certainly fare box recovery, operating cost per passenger, those sorts of things I think would get towards that. And these potentially could be separate, the measures of success are tied towards action items so that, we check it off that we're saying we're doing a good job or report on improvements. I think the performance measures similarly, it would just be kind of every plan update would say, this is what it was, this is what it is now, are we making progress? But yeah, that's a good one, good point, that number 11, I think we get to that.
Okay, very good. And I do like the idea, so when you go over and you talk about the measure of success, for example, just picking the first one there, number of sidewalks within a quarter mile of bus stops, what is the current baseline? And then what is the goal, I guess, and getting that concrete, pun intended, goal of what does success mean? Would 5% be good? I have no idea. Would 10% be better? No clue. Would 100% be ideal? Who knows? So the percentage, the measures of not only what the baseline would be today versus what you would expect a system like ours to have would be important and educational. We'll say it that way.
Yep.
I was thinking that I don't know if DOT has any way of measuring this, but my thought is that we can add as a performance measure the ambient measurements like CO2 and NO2 and particulate matter in the atmosphere, that type of stuff, as a measure of success, because the ultimate success of increasing transit is, are we improving the environment or making it worse? So I think if we put the bee in the bonnet now, we can start thinking of, does this actually improve our lives health-wise and that type of stuff, or not? So we can make things very efficient but greatly increase pollution. So I'd like to put the bee in the bonnet and as a metric that we should start paying attention to in this city.
I kind of similarly wondered, I don't know if it's possible to measure VMT vehicle miles traveled reduction, but I think that would then get to the points that you're making, and we can then turn that into anything else. And that seems to relate to taxpayers too, because it seems like everybody benefits that way. So, but I don't know, Andrew, if that is doable to measure that with these things or not.
We can get a proxy measure towards that. Basically, vehicle, counts on major roadways, and then kind of sum that together and kind of have an estimation for the local roads. There's other sources, streetlight data and the MPO, but so we could. The only issue is kind of the margin of error might be higher than incremental improvement year to year. So I would just kind of caution of. We could do it, but if we are using that to measure progress annually, that might be speculative.
Yeah, you have to be careful about measuring non-continuous functions with discrete measurements. So, your time frame is very important. You have to make it just right to make it meaningful.
Right. But if it was like a longer term of 5 or 10, that would totally make sense.
Andrew, I noticed that the idea, determine feasibility of demand response service for seniors appears under both goals, both goal 2 and 3, which I think is great because I think it's a good thing, but maybe it should only be in one place, I'm not sure. And my other, that's just a thought for you as you're looking through it. But I'm curious to know where that stands in relation to, I know that on April 27th, I see there's a committee of the whole is going to talk about, among other things, options for supplemental service, including senior service and shared ride, which I think is the same thing here. That's what you're referring
Yep.
to when you say demand responsive service.
Yep.
So how does that discussion by the committee of the whole fit into our conversation here, or vice versa?
Yeah, so I think that particular action item is kind of, I have it short, right? Because it really could be, and I don't know if I have any more, no. I know kind of in this section where we have some of those early kind of feasibility discussions, this is really kind of what I'm gonna base a lot of that discussion off of for that April meeting. But yeah, just get everybody kind of a background of, certainly during some of the budget discussions last year, and then this ARPA discussions, the senior center shuttle came up quite a few times, expanding transportation options for the senior center. We've talked about it a number of times. Kind of generally, I think trying to make sure we get a little bit more granular level of detail in front of council ahead of the CIP process, so that if we need to get a bus or put that in the CIP, or a shuttle or a van or several, that council has a chance to understand kind of what this feasibility is ahead of that. Ultimately, if we were to do this and buy our own vehicles, that would be a CIP purchase for next year. We would need that this spring, in April. And then as far as operating budget, certainly that would come along with it later this fall. So I think that's really the goal is, that's why there's a short-term action item, knowing that senior center really would like this. I think, at that meeting, we're planning on talking about senior center shuttle option, and potentially what a ride share, shared ride taxi would look like. So 2 similar mechanisms that will be, certainly I can talk more about it at the next meeting, kind of a preview to the April 28th meeting.
But, so will you be saying in that presentation, here's some language that Transportation and Transit Commission has adopted, and I'm sort of that you're speaking for us, or?
I wasn't planning on it, but that could be great. I think that would be, if we can get that at the next meeting, so
Okay.
In early April, I think that would be a great opportunity. So I can definitely add that as an action item next.
And I can certainly bring it up as well in the conversation. I anticipate that I probably will mention it. And I'll also mention this process at our next council meeting in my TTC report, so they can get a continuing update about what we're working on here, so it shouldn't be a surprise.
Good. Right,
And-
and finally, one other, Andrew, I'm sorry to take too much time here, but in goal 3, you talk about the 2015 intra-city transit feasibility study. That's an existing document?
Yeah. Yep.
Is it a guide to us, or is it what?
Yeah. So I think that was a consultant project back in 2015. I think ahead of the Richwood Transport, pilot, that basically ran through, lots of, like as I mentioned, it ran through the feasibility of adding intercity service, and then talked about some of the options, whether that's, shared ride taxi, microtransit, kind of shuttle sort of system, or if that's a full fixed route. I think it recommended, on the former options in that study, just from a cost perspective, to establish that, so flexible bus or shared ride taxi. And then the city did go with a shared ride taxi, but ultimately that didn't pan out very well. It had low usage and some complaints. So That is an existing document. I think there's still a lot of great information in that. It's online on the city website. A lot of relevant information that I'll be, taking with me to talk about these next two options.
Good.
I also just want to know quickly, Andrew, too, that there's obviously a lot of great things that could be included in that table. But if it gets too crowded, maybe we should think about if there's one or two columns that could be separated out into a separate table, just so it's actually a usable table and it's not, 6-point font, because there's 100 columns. But I like what you've done here. I think you boiled it down to the essence, but there are other options that we've obviously talked about, like adding the comp plan goals, but maybe there could be separate tables that kind of achieve that goal.
The action items could be grouped with not just a whole list of 24, but maybe grouped so that, something applies to paratransit and, there's a little label that says this applies to bus and so forth. That would kind of break it up into categories so people can visually go to the points that they want without having to look through the whole table.
And I share your affinity for getting all the table all on one page, but I don't think it too much loss to make this a two-page table.
Yeah, yep.
And that
Sure.
action item column, could be, each item could have 2 lines, and you could save a lot of space. You gotta make room for more columns in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And then you're not, tracing 9 back to where you saw it up in the text. Yeah, so I mean, that's a good point.
You could have a little dotted line.
Right. Okay. Awesome. And then I'll just quickly touch on section 3. This is really just, in my mind, if we were to get council approval of this, we're really kind of embedding the network redesign in this. And so certainly, we haven't finalized that. It's still very much proposed, but I think this would be an appropriate place to kind of put, knowing that everything's in flux and that, this network redesign is going ahead. Well, there will be changes. What those are, we're not exactly sure yet, but I think just embedding that in this document to get approval from that through council. And so I put in the proposed right now as the recommended, but we're going to be having a meeting. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we'll have upcoming meetings to talk more about these routes. But I think embedding it in the plan makes sense, and then there's a conclusion. So as I mentioned, I can give this in Word in a number of different ways. Let me know if you have other requests as far as different ways to see this, and happy to accommodate that.
Thank you. Good work on that, and I appreciate seeing this. Tell me about the mobility hub. There's a appendix. And I didn't see, I missed it. Is there a reference to that in the text here over here?
Yeah, I just put one.
It's here, under micro
Oh,
mobility.
okay,
to
sorry,
transit.
my bad.
Thanks. Yeah. Yep, I forgot where I put that.
So it's a multimodal transit hub? Is that a synonym for?
Yeah, exactly. So, and this was a concept, as I mentioned in the last plan. I think, since in the last 12 years, more has been kind of, with more options, I think more has been flushed out. So, this is from Fort Collins plan that basically just gives an example of what that could look like. And it does also include, car share and car charging station, much larger than just transit necessarily. But so I think there's different scales of this certainly that the city could employ.
Good, thank you, Andrew. And commission members, is there a need for further discussion of this right now, or should we move on to item B?
I'll just say, it seems like you did a lot of work. I think it's great, so just thank you. It's like way different from what we looked at last time, so thank you for doing all of this. I think it's great.
I was impressed, Andrew.
It is
Yeah.
very
It looks
good.
really good. Yep.
It is very good. Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to item 7B, review of Madison Metro Network redesign. And one of the things you gave us was a summary of what people commented last time and where we are with those things, some things, actions you've taken. But why don't you lead off that discussion for us, Andrew?
Sure, yep. Yeah, sorry, this kind of looked, you might blink twice, go, is this the minutes again? I wanted to make sure, we were getting kind of comments addressed and all kind of in one spot. So I can, so I just kind of go line by line from different comments. I'm sorry if I missed any, feel free to bring it up now, if I did.
Yeah.
But I think there were a lot of comments mainly directed at outreach last time. I think there was certainly some about, talking about routes changing and service disruptions and the loss of transfer points, those sorts of things. So I kind of try to embed that in here. I can just go one by one if you want. Otherwise, I think maybe the most instructive would be real fast if I share my screen. And then, so one of the comments was about a map. And so Mass Metro is providing one that they're going to include in basically the posters for us for the Fitchburg specific meeting. But they do have this map online that shows existing and proposed routes and is interactive. So I think that would be helpful. I do have the attached flyers that we can basically review and just make sure this works for everybody. This is the initial attempt. This is pretty bare bones. It's just kind of the information you need. I think separately right now, as I mentioned, Metro's putting that map on a page with the 4 things that the TDC asked for. So I don't have that yet, but I should have that probably sometime this week or early next week, I suppose. But I think if we're okay with these, I can certainly start posting them in everywhere you would recommend. And as Mick noted in his comment, his email back to me, that they are posting them on buses, the general one, and our March 28th meeting is on their website of one of the kind of outreach meetings. But they're posting the flyers on their buses and on bus stops, and they've asked if there's specific ones we want. So that's certainly some feedback we can give them. They're also doing a number of other things. And again, this is not Fitchburg specific necessarily, although they are doing some Facebook ads specific to Fitchburg. But they're, these are kind of, the nice thing is that in some ways we're kind of jumping on to this larger effort that, if folks in Fitchburg hear about it from all these various means, it's a regional effort, right? So,
Andrew, is
Yep.
that PDF, is that available as a separate PDF document that's hosted on the Fitchburg website or the Metro website? It's just nice to have the individual PDF link that I can send out and for that people
This
can
one?
easily print. Yes.
Yeah, we could
And
do
one
that,
in,
yep.
yeah, English.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. English and Spanish, yep. For sure. And then some other comments, we talked about the business community. I am working with economic development for notification for large employers. I sent an email to Chamber, I haven't heard anything back yet. We also talked, we talked a little bit about the bus boarding data. So we do have that link, and then we'll also certainly bring it up at the March 28th meeting. And then I do have an update on a cost estimate. So working through some of the kind of, we had a ridership and a coverage network, and we were kind of working through that. And most of that really focused on the weekday, the trips, the routes that would be weekday. We weren't really talking about commuter trips yet, commuter routes, that sort of thing. Now what we're seeing is really a good representation of everyday routes. So basically the ones you see in blue and red on the network redesign map, those would be all day, every day. There might be some reduced service during the nighttime, basically, going from every 15 minutes to 30 minutes on the B line, for example, coming down Fish Hatchery. But, those are going to be existing both weekdays and weekends, which is a change. Right now we have weekday routes and we have weekend and holiday routes. But the biggest change along with that is that the 59, which I previously thought we might have some contingency for, we do not have that contingency. So I know Metro kind of at a regional scale is holding on to some, but they're not doing that for partners. So we basically have right now a rough estimate of 300, service hours annually of buffer. And so really that's nothing. We can't add another route for that. And so we don't have the 59 included, which runs from Orchard Point down to City Hall. over the weekends and holidays, so that route won't exist anymore. So I did want to be clear about that because that was I misunderstood that kind of in the progression of things. And I think that also, I think a subtle change to any of the routes would still be cost neutral, would still fit under that 11,000 service hours that we have planned for 2023. But anything more than that, we're really basically talking about adding more, we're gonna need more money in order to cover that. So yeah, that margin is pretty thin currently. So if we're thinking about adding something, I guess I just want to caution folks to think we might have to take something away potentially or add more money. But having said all that, I definitely asked for walk sheds to be included on the map. Fitchburg Star did write an article even before I mentioned it, but I also mentioned it to Kimberly. So that's in both online and will be in the paper. And then, yep, we did ask for the employment centers to be on the map. So any other comments about the network redesign, the outreach process? I think also, I will mention before I open it up, is just we've been working after I sent this out, but before today, working through some additional meetings, basically for folks who might not have internet access or can't make it to City Hall on the 28th, which is when we're right now having the Fitchburg specific route network redesign meeting. So we're looking at 4 venues potentially, mainly in the northern areas of the city, spread out so that if there are folks who can't make it otherwise, that they could still come and kind of have a watch party. If we don't have enough staff or don't have venue availability, we might basically postpone those and just show a recording and then take further comments at those meetings. So we're still working that out, but basically I just want to let folks know that it's not just going to be City Hall and virtual. There's going to be other options for folks to participate in this. And there is certainly a survey online. So.
And just to be clear, so I understand that this poster that's in here, Fitchburg Community Meeting poster, these will be on the buses so that people will see them on their bus?
That's, from my understanding, it's not these yet. I think as soon as we can ask Metro to put these on the bus instead for Fitchburg routes, right?
Yeah.
And then certainly at the bus stops in Fitchburg, we can post these.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So if you guys are okay with this, and then sorry, I don't have the one with the map, but if you're okay with these options, then I can certainly start putting them up at bus stops or ask Metro.
The only thing about this is there's a very clear number. Where does that number go to? The phone number, sorry, the phone number.
Yeah, that's Madison Metro, so that would be directed towards their staff, which is not ideal. I mean, it could be us. I mean, it could be me.
Just because you know this, but I've been talking to people that want to submit feedback that don't have internet access. Yeah. So the phone number really is their only method to truly get additional information if they need it. So I'm glad that there is a phone number, but we should think about how that Metro has enough information to be able to share Fitchburg specific info with the people that need it.
Does the city have a general call number for after hours support and all that stuff, or what happens?
I don't know about after hours.
I think it's dispatch. I think that's the option, not emergency number.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that might be a nice thing to have as the city gets bigger, to find a way to automate the collection of messages, especially after hours. Maybe
it's Metro they just know who in the Fitchburg they can call to direct people to. Because I can also take calls. I mean, I'm happy for people to send them my way, and I can.
Or a text. A text might be useful too. If there's, I don't know what the city has for tech support, but a lot of people are willing to text at the drop of a hat. So. Yeah, but some people, one particular person that is like representative of a group, she only has a home phone, so she can't text, can't get on the internet. Like it's like her call is the connection, and she can't get to City Hall. I know someone who has a regular old telephone and no cell phone. So I know how that goes. When I once accidentally said you should text me, she said, I don't have it. One of those damn fancy phones.
All right. But I think it looks good, Andrew, and I think we should just
Okay.
get them out there as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I like the concept is good. And that QR code is kind of interesting.
I kind of wish it was bright red and like Metro was completely updating its service in 2023 is like highlighted in yellow. I just feel like it needs to be more, in my personal opinion, is that it
Yeah.
should be dramatic because people need to see it and need to know that it's, because this is significant and I think people don't, they've been hearing about this network redesign, these meetings, but I don't know if people really are knowing until now that they're seeing the articles or seeing the draft map. Now they're starting to be like, oh my gosh, this is a big change. And for a lot of people, it's a good change. For some people, it's a bad change. And I don't know. I don't know if it's possible to mess with. I mean, like, I would literally, if it were me, I would highlight Metro is completely updating its service in 2023 in yellow. And it's super ugly, but it just like gets people's attention.
Well, I don't know if it's too dramatic, but like changing instead of, updating is unclear. It should be
Yeah.
like something that makes it clear that their experience
Yeah,
could
updating
change.
sounds like too modest a change, I agree. Change is, you know,
Oh.
as dramatic as you can make it, Andrew, would be the phrasing.
And just a little, something that struck me as odd, related to this and going back to the draft transit plan. In section 3, it summarizes the significant changes that will come with this, and the third one is to increase the average walk to the nearest stop. Now, I guess that's just true, because they're focusing on whatever the term was, ridership, not coverage. It really, when I first saw that, I thought, how can that be right?
Right.
It's somehow, and I don't know if this is the place, but it needs to be explained to people why it's good that you have to walk farther to your bus stop.
That's why, I mean, that's why the meetings are gonna be so key.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna, I mean, my understanding, Andrew, is that they're gonna walk through the process of how they came to this conclusion and the pros and cons and.
Yeah, I think you know, there's bus stop signs at every route that's gonna be dropped, so those would probably be a great place to attach some flyers saying that this stop
Won't be here.
may not be here under the revised plan. You may wanna contribute your ideas, so.
That's actually a good idea
Yeah.
just to make sure it's on every bus stop for the routes that are completely going away, like the King James Way that's being, and all that Dunn's Marsh area. All those bus stops should have a sign, even if they're low traffic, just because
Yeah.
they're the biggest deal.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on the metro redesign? Seeing none.
Oh, I feel like I have one, hold on, just. Andrew, do you need any more help, like with getting, because I've already, just so you know, I've been talking with Andrew about getting these neighborhood meetings, but is there anything that you need help from the committee to do? Is it just encouraging us to share this with our networks and making sure that people know about it, or like, do you actually need like people to go post things on bus stop signs? I just want to see if there's anything that you need help with that maybe we could put out to the committee here as a call to
Yeah,
action.
that's good. So, I mean, I want to get the flyers approved first before, but I'm going to reach out to Metro. I think that they can post them on the bus stops themselves. But I think the other big thing is the leasing offices and kind of like mail rooms. You know, to the extent that we can post those, getting a list of places, getting those distributed. You know, I'm planning on taking probably a day and a half to try to do that. But if anybody else wants to, we can kind of divide and conquer. That would be helpful.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, if we all want to think about places that you could post signs that will, Alder Maldonado's been helping a lot in terms of putting together a list for District 1 areas, since he knows the district very well. I'll probably work on, Andrew, I'll work on North Fish Hatchery Road. I know a lot of the building managers in there. But that's a good idea. Anyone that has ideas of where we could post it in an office and contacts, that's great.
Okay, very good. Item 7C, again, we've postponed to the next meeting. Going on to action items. 8A, Resolution R3822, and I think I'll just, Andrew, have you just introduce that with no discussion, and then we'll get a motion to approve. And we'll have discussion following up the motion.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, I think you guys saw this before. Sorry, this is the clearing grubbing, right? Sorry, I'm
Yep.
down.
Yeah,
below.
Tree
yeah,
clearing and
tree
grubbing.
clearing and grubbing.
Yep. So this, we rejected the bids previously. This is the tree clearing ahead of the Lacey Road project, just so that we can get in and out before June 1st, where brown bat's maternity season. So this is just a rebid of that, and basically we now have a bidder, and so this would just be approval of that contract.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Gabriella moves to approve, second?
Second.
I hear a second from Jason and Elizabeth, but we'll give it to Jason. And with that, is there any discussion?
Andrew, have we worked with this firm in the past?
The planning department, or the parks department, has worked on smaller projects. They had some pretty good references for these larger projects as well. So we have familiarity. They're local, and they've done similar projects.
Andrew, I just wanted to watch about, is this under budget, or is the budget for this not separate from the budget for the entire project? Like, do you budget out this as a line item, or is it the budget for the entire project?
Yeah, it's the budget for the entire
Okay,
project. So it's not, yeah.
It can't
we
be
had
over
engineer's
budget.
estimate, it came below that, but we didn't have this separated out specifically in the bottom line.
Okay, but it was below the estimate?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Wow, it's expensive to cut down trees, huh?
Well, the insurance is probably 90% of that, I would think.
Okay, any other, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution R 3822 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, this resolution is approved by TTC. Item 8B, resolution R 3922, approving the construction contract with Wisconsin Department of Transportation for CTH MM and McCoy Road intersection improvements. And Andrew, just give us an intro on that.
Sure. So this is the kind of highway MM and McCoy intersection improvements. Basically, we talked about this in the past. The design's been done for a while. Now we have both the contractor, Van Dolen, on board for WISDOT, and the construction engineer on board for WISDOT. So WISDOT's managing this, but we have to approve basically an award, a purchase order for them in order to complete the project. So it's still the city's project, but with federal funding and done through WISDOT, or WISDOT led and ran.
With that, could I have a motion to approve resolution R 3922?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. A second? Gabriella, I'll take that as a
Yep.
second. Any discussion or questions at this point?
I think it's, all your resolutions, Andrew, here are pretty well drafted and written, I think. It's good work.
Okay, and just a procedural question. These documents that we see in our minutes packet, it says a pre-approval request. Just so I know, what does this do? This isn't a purchase order. I mean, what is it?
It's similar to a purchase order. So along basically according to our budgeting rules, I think it's anything over 5K we need a pre-approval for, and then there's other gradations for whether we need council approval. But so that's basically on the finance side of I punch in all the information about the different bids or whatever the case may be. In this case, it was the sole source because it's WISDOT, but you punch that in on the finance side, and then that's where we get our purchase order on the finance software. So I think it goes along with it because we need approval from everybody and from council on basically sign off because that's over the, I want to say it's 25K. We need council approval of that, pre-approval. I will mention that the one for the clearing governing, it didn't, by the time I got in the packet, it wasn't fully approved, but now it is fully approved. So, but yeah, that's usually just anything over 25K or even less than that. If it's over 5K when you have pre-approval, it's usually just appended to these resolutions just as a simultaneous approval. If that makes sense.
Are these all for calendar year 2022 completion, or
Yeah, it would be,
are any
yep, it'll be constructed this summer.
all within the current year? Okay.
All right, thank you. Any more questions or discussion on this resolution? Seeing no indication of that, all those in favor of R 3922, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved by this body. Item 8C, Resolution R 4022, approving the relocation order and TPP related to reconstruction of the Lacey Road and Seminole Highway intersection. Again, just a nutshell intro to that. Andrew?
Sure. Yep, so just like with Sain and Lacey before that, this is a transportation project plat that outlines the areas that the city's looking to purchase basically as necessary with the road reconstruction project. So there's an intersection reconstruction. Basically, these areas around the intersection are either for path or for stormwater or for both. And so, you know, the stormwater pond, we were lucky enough not to have to buy up land for that in any of the quadrants, because we're putting that in the city right-of-way on the, or basically an outlot on the northeast corner. But in each of the other corners, we do have some drainage going in there, basically in the ditches, and we have some increased width for the path and the roundabout. So just because of that, we're buying up some sections of the quadrants in order to accommodate that and, you know, obviously compensate the property owners for their loss of land.
Okay, we need a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Gabriella. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Is there any discussion or questions? It just, as I look on the project plat, it's, and maybe you touched on this in your comments, but there's a much bigger hit over on the northeast corner, much bigger. It looks like, is all of that gonna be a condemned little piece of land? And I just happen to notice that. Why is that?
Sure.
Why isn't
Yep,
it
so
symmetrical?
this is a new subdivision here.
Yeah,
This is a public outlot. This is a public outlot.
okay,
This, for whatever reason, was a private outlot with the development. And then this is the city right away. So when this development went in, Crescent Crossing, they dedicated this area to public right of way,
okay.
whereas this was a public outlot. I think specifically because we thought that we were going to have a bypass lane here, and the roundabout footprint was going to be a little bit bigger.
Oh.
Instead of having that bypass lane, that now we're using that area as well as the public outlot to hold that stormwater as a detention pond. So luckily, you know, this is all city already, and so we're not buying any of this. It's just this private outlot down here that we're buying a portion of, basically to route the ditch water from here up into the pond here. And I'm sorry, I wish we, you know, attached the designs as they are along with this, but, you know, it's just approval for the TPP, but it's hard to see what's actually behind it, you know, why we're doing what we're doing. That's a good question.
Are some of those other hatched areas to be condemned and taken by the city also, or what are those?
Exactly. So anything you see with this little, you know, line hatch, that's permanent fee acquisition. So that will be permanent city right of way. And so, like I mentioned, these are primarily due to, you know, the expansion of the footprint of the intersection and that path going around it. And then the smaller hatch is a temporary easement just for grading to tie back into the land. So yeah, you know, certainly these two corners, there's quite a bit. This corner, we were pretty good at kind of keeping with the existing footprint and just taking a little bit. So
Okay.
Andrew,
That's where the natural gas station is?
The southwest corner.
That restricts the southwest corner a lot, doesn't it?
Yep. We certainly couldn't move this. There's a lot of high pressure gas in there, so. Trying to stay away from that.
Do we expect there to be any sort of surprise MG&E infrastructure like we've had with other road projects, or? Because I know we had a lot of problems with the Seminole Highway, McKee, and where we had some wild old MG&E infrastructure that became problematic. Is that, or maybe it's more well defined in that area because of the natural gas facility?
I think so. And we have done some ULOs, underground locations of those, just verifying exactly where they are and the elevation they are. So we have a pretty good confidence where all that is. Obviously you open things up, you find old stuff, but we work pretty closely with, I think potentially sometimes what happens is, there's a gas line that they don't know about, or that's, in an easement and we didn't know that it was in an easement, that sort of thing. I think in this, they're pretty well defined and we know where, what's in public right of way.
Yeah.
So I don't think there should be too many surprises.
Last year, I don't know, I'm not sure if I came to TTC, but there was a large MG&E structure under the road that we had to move that we didn't expect to. And anyway, I was just shocked that that we didn't know where that was in advance. It's just wild to me. Anyway, that's beside the point. But in regards to the TPP, I know that it sounds like the resolution is so that whatever we end up costing, that's approved administratively, even though will likely be above the threshold for it to come to council. But does that ever get reported back to council or to committees about how much we actually spent on the acquisition of the land?
From my understanding, going into these for Lacey, for example, I think the checks ultimately would get reported to Finance Committee and Council.
Okay, so it's going to come through the finance report.
But it's a little bit on the back end side of it, of like, it's already been approved and you guys will be able to see it certainly. But I think that's, I think we started doing that just because there was a lot, you have to do a closed session and there's a lot back and forth with the negotiations. So I think it was just kind of a streamlined process that I think we started with Fish.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've been carrying over to these 3 plats. But we'll still go to Finance Committee with these to, talk about and I can do a kind of high level estimates, but we won't have any of our, our sub-consultant for, appraising and these sort of negotiations doesn't start until we get this TPP approved, just because technically they can't reach out to any owners until that's approved and recorded. So I won't have, we have plenty of information about properties in this area from other plats, but I won't have any concrete numbers until after this is approved.
Yeah, I'm glad it's streamlined. I think that's the right call. I just was curious.
Will this project be done with the rest of the westward project?
That is the plan. We're really trying hard to, I started this one a little bit too late, and now we're trying to catch it up to, Lacey that started probably a year before it. So we're making good progress. This is kind of the next step, and then because it's small, it should be able to be combined. One way or another, we are building it this year. It just might be with a different contractor or be let separately with the same contractor.
The bicycle path certainly makes that a little bit easier to separate out, because it's kind of nicely divides it into 2 anyway.
All right, other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving resolution R4022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. I see there's no opposition, so that is approved also. On to report from department. Andrew, take it away.
So the chip seal and crack fill map is available. I unfortunately did not attach it. I'm sorry. I will send that out to folks. Mainly on chip seal, mainly Lacey is the big one. East Lacey by the roundabouts. That's a lot of striping, a lot of there, and then East Sherrill in that area as well. So between the chip seal this summer and the South Lane reconstruction, there's going to be a lot of work going on there. There's also plenty of other roads and plenty of other ones on Crackfield. So I'll just send the map and then everybody have it. Then 2022 resurfacing, we're still working, kind of honing that in, so we don't have a map on that yet, but we should by next month or so. Lacey Road, as I mentioned, design is nearing completion on the Lacey Road west of the Badger State Trail. I think we're at basically 60% east of the Badger State Trail, so we're trying to get both of those completed so that we can let in early May or late April and then get it built. We did hit a slight snag that Dane County updated their stormwater requirements, and so now they're actually more restrictive than the city, which is not typical. So we've had to resize some of our facilities, so we'll probably have to update some of the plans, but that shouldn't slow us down too much, and we should still be able to hit that date. Sain Road, so council did approve the TPP that you guys saw, and design continues. We're starting to, the design consultants starting to sketch out the order of things. Basically, I think we're going to start at the intersection of East Sherrill and Sain and work south. That's the current plan, and then doing the railroad work over next winter, and then kind of finish up the signals in the spring. But construction start still planned for September. I did talk about the on-street parking ordinances in the public meeting at the last meeting, just briefly. I'm going to bring it up again here. There is still a survey out there on the city website on the front page. You can still see that until tomorrow. I think we have 40 or so responses so far, so pretty good
Wow, really?
turnout so far. And in that survey, there we have links to the public meeting, so you can still watch that and get all that information. It's a lot of me reading through ordinances, so you can skip ahead, which is nice. And let's see, and then certainly that March 28th, as we talked about before, at 6 o'clock, the city will host a public meeting about the network redesign, specifically on Fitchburg routes. We're trying to have other areas for people to watch, and that will come out. I can certainly email that to everybody on the commission, and then we'll have that in the flyer as we get those finalized. We have 4 venues that we're just trying to finalize this week, if not early next week. So, and then April 27th, as Bill mentioned, that council of the whole meeting, we're really trying to talk about a lot of these things we've been talking about. So certainly network redesign. Metro would be there for that meeting to talk about that, both the process and the actual draft network, and kind of talk through some of the trade-offs and that sort of stuff. And then the senior service and the share ride taxi, the feasibility analysis that we talked about in the transit plan, talking through some of those options, basically just getting, and we feel like these are connected kind of processes and developments, and so getting that kind of all in front of council at once ahead of CIP season seemed appropriate. So those are kind of some of the latest developments. Any questions?
No, but thank you for putting those bullets in writing like this. I like that. It's a good format, helpful, I think, for us to see a little bullet list like that, what you got to say. Also, thank you for somebody, for the notes, the minutes on the last meeting. I thought were unusually complete. Did you do those?
Yep. I mean, I listened to you guys' comments. It seemed like, we wanted a little bit more comprehensive notes, and maybe some, I kind of go off the cuff a little bit with my department report, and so trying to get that in there for you guys. Obviously things change in a week, right? But to the extent that I can get it in there, I will try.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, the minutes and this document, and your summary of the network redesign, capturing everybody's suggestions and where we stand with that. Those are really helpful things. And with that, the only remaining thing is announcements. You got any announcements, Andrew?
I also have one. I have one.
Okay.
So just an update on the ARPA TID spending plan, which I mentioned last time. So the amendments were put in, they were released, they were discussed at a recent committee of the whole meeting. There are 24 council proposed amendments. Several are related to transportation and transit, and I was just gonna read them off quickly. Number 9, add bike parking stalls to major city parks. Number 12, add consultant to plan for park and rides. That's one of mine that I talked about including. Number 14, add traffic calming in District 1, where there was a whole list of streets. And then number 22, add funding for Fitchburg's Greenway system, which I mentioned is kind of that bike connections. And then number 24, add senior center vehicle. But there's 24, so you can take a look. If you're interested in providing feedback, written feedback to the council is always welcome. Also, there is a public hearing at the March 22nd council meeting. That's Tuesday, March 22nd, 7:30 PM. It's usually right at the top of the meeting. And then we will vote later that night on adopting the amendments and then adopting the plan as amended.
Okay, so you're gonna go, just like an amendment to the budget, you're gonna go through everybody's amendments and
Yeah.
up or down?
We'll go through one by one. It's a little bit less, I mean, it's the same process, but it's a little bit less formal because it's just a plan. It's not, we're not allocating funding. We're just getting all these ideas on the table so that staff can do additional research and that we can actually start putting them on a time horizon, because this money doesn't need to be spent right away. And we can't spend there's no way we can spend $5.2 million in a single year. It's just not possible. So, then the next steps will be putting these into the CIP, into the budget process. And some of those will fall by the wayside because we can't fund all of these projects with that much money either. It's a list of ideas, and then we'll fund them based on what gives the most bang for the buck. So, matching grant funding is that we talked about last time. We want to use a lot of this money to, double the money we can get for the city. So if we have grant opportunities that are matching funding, that's obviously a higher priority than something that's just full out, just spending the money.
Usually federal funds have restrictions, you can't use it for matching, but as far as I know, we kind of have that freedom on this one.
Well, so the ARPA, I believe the ARPA money can't be used that way, but we also have about $2 million in TID funding.
Yeah.
Because it's two different pots of money.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the TID has no.
We can treat them the same.
Yeah, yeah, we're treating them as one spending plan,
And
but
one
they're,
pot, so,
yeah.
yeah, so
And
they're
then,
a little bit wider, unusual planning
yep,
based accordingly.
yeah,
So,
certainly.
I'm sorry. At that one meeting, you're gonna go through the proposed amendments and then adopt
The amended plan, yep.
Okay.
My hope is that we'll adopt everything, just because it's a plan and there's no allocation of money.
It's a
but
wish list.
yes, exactly, it's a wish list. And I do hope that these ideas, the ones that aren't implemented, they're kind of on the list for future. And we could put them in the CIP potentially for the back 5 years, so
Okay.
which is always like the future theoretical planning and not near
Okay.
term. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's, keep an eye on that and let me know if you have any questions about how to submit feedback. I'm happy to kind of talk to you offline.
Okay,
about how to
appreciate
do
it.
that.
Thank you.
And,
And I'm glad to hear that senior center vehicle was in there.
I have an announcement.
Yep.
My term ends on April 19th, my 3-year term, so next meeting will probably be my last TTTC meeting.
Troy, we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, and who was gonna catch me up when I forget to call for a vote on stuff?
I will bug the automation and put in a special
You can
plant that
automate that.
I'll do my best.
springs
Bill.
up.
But how long have you been on?
I think it's 3 full terms and part of another one, but
Holy cow.
I haven't gone back to how far it was. It was back when the TTC was, let me see. Gosh, Kim was on the committee, and I think she was chair for the first few years. So-
Kim Lobdell?
I don't know.
So I don't know who's going to be the dean of the TTC, to take over if nobody shows up otherwise,
I
but
don't know. It was bad.
you'll all have to figure that out for yourselves.
We'll do our best, but it is too bad to lose institutional memory and,
Well, I'm probably going to be in touch with my elder here,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I extend her midnight reading when she can't sleep for any other reason.
And then, well, I guess that leads into the point that there's also an opening on TTC come April. So if you know anyone that's interested in transit, I know there were a couple of applications from a while back that said, because the mayor kind of keeps a list of people
Yeah.
that have applied and kind of can bring them back up. But that being said, anyone that's interested, definitely encourage people to apply.
So there's, we are having elections, and you're not up for election,
Oh, no, I am up for election.
but you're not opposed.
Yeah, I'll talk about that offline. I
But I
prefer
didn't
not
want,
to talk
I
about
didn't want
elections.
to talk about that, but my question was, will we be looking at possible naming of a different council representative to this?
TBD. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah,
It's up to the mayor pretty much, but, I
Yeah.
mean, that's just a form. I can't see him appointing somebody to a committee they don't want to serve on.
it's unknown at this point, but
Okay. Other announcements? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew.